down, said, you know, Chad Allen's leaving, because the rumors were all over town. He's going back to school, and I'd like to invite you to be our new lead singer. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, pretty good offer, but you're too late. The Beatles called me last night. And he walked out of the room. And we went, what? What?
Guitar icon, music historian, radio host, Randy Bachman has made some of Canada's and the world's most enduring rock music, from the Guess Who to Bachman-Turner Overdrive. We met at the Pyramid Club in Winnipeg on the eve of a Bachman-Turner reunion tour. Randy, you and I are almost the same vintage, and I remember in the 50s, I lived briefly with my parents in Washington, D.C., and one of the life-changing things for me at that time was seeing Elvis Presley. Was that a big deal for you?
That was my life change.
Yeah?
Yeah. You can usually look back at your life and there's one or two milestones that changed you. And I grew up in Winnipeg playing classical violin from about age of 5 to about 14. And it was quite terrible. You had to play all the notes on the page, and it was Royal Conservatory. You had to stand a certain way and do a certain thing. And you try to rebel against it, and you really can't, because you've been taking lessons. But it did teach me the discipline of practicing. Half hour in the morning, half hour after school, hour or so of practice every day. And it gets music in your heart and soul. And when you play violin, you play one thing: melody.
Yeah.
So it taught me melody. And I remember it wasn't too far from here. We didn't even have a TV, but a rich friend on the block had the first TV, so suddenly everyone was his friend. And got invited over and saw Elvis on TV. And said, what is that? At the same time on the radio here in Winnipeg, we're starting to play Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, Elvis, just the odd little song, because pretty much country western kind of stuff up to that point.
It was all country swing back then, if I remember. That sort of stuff was what we got.
And fighting of country swing, and still Tony Bennett, Patty Page, and that kind of thing, you know. And so this moment happened on television, and they said, what is that? And somebody in the room said, oh, that's called rock and roll. Well, who is that? It's Elvis Presley. And that was this very strange name the first time you hear it. What's that name? Elvis Presley. Elvis? Elvin? Eldon? No, Elvis? You know, that kind of thing. And then the next day, because that changed the whole world, not just me, the next day, radio was like a wide open door. Let's play more of this. Let's play, you know, That's All Right, Mama, and whatever his hits were at the time. And then when, also I used to listen to a thing here Saturday morning called the CKY Caravan. And CKY was a radio station. They had a caravan, which was a big trailer, that would drive out to different locations to a car lot and sell used cars and new cars every Saturday morning. And the band was the CKY Caravan. The main guy was Hal Lone Pine. The main lady was Betty Cody. And the next in line was Hal Lone Pine Jr. And they wore these white nudie suits with cactus on and rhinestones and fringes. You know what you would see on Roy Rogers?
Yes.
Fringes, the big hats and fringes and stuff. And this show lasted an hour. And in the middle of the show, at about 11:30, it would start at 11 and go till noon, they'd say, now we're going to take a break and let Junior play. And out of my little radio came this magnificent guitar music from the band called Junior. And lo and behold, one week they're playing my end of town. They're playing Gellhorn Motors way out North Main, the north end of Winnipeg, right across from Wescalone Park. I ride my bicycle there. And I wait, and I'm just blown away, because it's a car lot. The stage is about that high, so we're this far from them, watching them, basically staring at their hands, playing the guitars. And there's Hal Lone Pine, whose real name was Breau.
Yeah.
There's Betty Cody, whose real name was Breau. Yeah. And there's Junior, whose real name was Breau. So it was Hal Lone Pine Jr. Junior was Lenny Breau. When they took the break to let Junior play, they left the stage. There's just one little guy standing there with a big orange Gretsch, and he starts to play Caravan. And I'm enamored now by guitar. It's been a couple of weeks since Elvis has been on. I'm hearing it on the radio, and I'm looking who else is playing these parts on the guitar, because I'm looking around, everyone else is chatting and mingling, and there's this one guy playing alone. He had a Roy Butts Echoplex amp at the time, which gave him that Scotty Moore slapback, that rockabilly slapback. I stood right in front of him. They came back on stage after his one song. When they were then packing up just past noon, I went over to him and shook hands, and he knew I was enamored because I was like watching his fingers. Then I saw he had a thumb pick and his fingers were moving. He was doing all the bass line with his thumb as like a one-man band.
Yeah.
And I remember went up to him and I said, "What is that called that you're playing?" And he said, "It's called Chet Atkins." And I thought it was one word like flamenco. I thought it was Chet Atkins, like flamenco.
A style of music.
So I said, I said, I didn't say I want to. I said, I need to learn to play like that. And when I said need, his eyes kind of went, he said, "You need?" I said, "I need to learn to play like that. How do I do that?" And he said, "Well, just go to the record store. You got to get it in your head first. Go to a record store and get a Chet Atkins album." So I run down to Eaton's here and I go and I ask the record, "I want a Chet Atkins album." And the woman says, "Do you mean Chet Atkins?" I said, No, it's one big word. It's like flamenco, it's Chet Atkins. She said, "No, I think you mean Chet Atkins." She put it on and I heard it and said, "That's it." So I took that home. I struggled with that because up to that point I knew one song, "I Walked the Line," Johnny Cash's song, 3 chords. But in the middle he changes key, so it's really another 3 chords, so it's a 4-chord song. I struggled with that learning Harry Lime's theme. Da, da, da,
Yeah, it's the third man.
da, 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 third man theme. Da, 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 da. And I learned it really primitively. The Caravan was playing it 2 or 3 weeks later. I went to them again, and I went up to him, to Lenny Breau, and I said, "I got a Chet Atkins album, and I learned a song." And I played it for him. And he said, "You're playing it all wrong." But that's... it's in my head, and I didn't know how to do it, but what's important is I can go, dun, 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 boom, dun, just like Johnny Cash got, doom, dig it, doom, dig it. But you got to do that with your thumb, right? And he said, "Where do you live?" And I said, "I live in Garden City." And he said, "Yeah, I just got a house in Garden City," because they had just moved to town from Maine. And I said, "Where do you live?" And he said, "Sinclair Avenue." And I said, "What's the number?" And he told me, he said, "I got 2 girlfriends that are right across the street." I had 2 twin girls that I was friendly with, Schmallinger twins. And I would go to their house every day for lunch because I lived too far away from school. And their mom would make us lunch. They'd go back to school. And then that every afternoon from that point on, I played hooky, went to his house, sat there. He'd just be getting up. It'd be noon, 1 o'clock, 1:30. He'd have played the night before outside around Winnipeg, Patterson's ranch house or one of these things, doing these country swing dances and weddings and things like that. And I went to his house every afternoon for 2 years.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that was training that nobody got.
I know. And I was about 15 and a half. He was a year older. He was about 16 and a half. I was his only friend in Winnipeg. They just moved to town. I was his connection. I introduced him to my 2 girlfriends who were like 15 or 16. So suddenly he knew kids in his own age, because he's playing with adults. He had been playing with adults since he was 10.
And he's a very shy, kind of withdrawn guy,
yes.
too.
So he's 10 years old. He's playing with adults, and he really has no... And he doesn't go to school. I thought, this guy's great. He doesn't go to school, you know. He'd quit school to play with the band. And once I learned 3 or 4 Chet Atkins albums, and that's the greatest learning you can have, because Chet Atkins plays bluegrass and country and flamenco and Broadway standards and, you know what I mean, all in his style. I kind of learned everything. So I was just going to then take Lenny Breau, the odd little Chuck Berry thing and stuff, and since I knew melody myself, I could pick it out right off a record and play it on the top strings of the guitar. Shortly after that, I'd saved my money, got an orange Gretsch like him, joined a band that became the Guess Who, did Shakin' All Over.
Yeah.
Bing, top 20 Billboard, and we're quitting school and going on the Kingsman Louie tour in 1965, based out of New York City.
Now I want to ask you about that. The legend about the name of the band came from Quality Records. Now, you guys couldn't get airplay on Canadian stations, all right? That was
not really. We got airplay in town here because those were the days where a DJ adopted you. He was getting paid very little money.
Yeah.
And if he went out and MC'd a high school dance, he might get $50.
A little extra.
He'd play records.
Yeah.
Records get pretty boring. So when the minute one guy adopted a band and they became his band to play maybe an hour of hit parade stuff, and then he would play records in between. So you got airplay there. Chet Allen was our lead singer. We were trying to write our own songs. We couldn't write our songs. I mean, we did. They're absolutely terrible. And we found somebody had a cousin who lived in London, who every year at Christmas for a present, because they couldn't afford presents, would gather all their friends' singles and put them on a 7.5-inch reel and send the tape over here. So we would listen to this, and this was Cliff and the Shadows and Shane Fenton and the Fentones and all the other bands that were early 60s British bands, basically the Shadows. Incredible guitar band, who are all friends of mine today because of this. And one of the songs in there was called Shakin' All Over. And this is maybe about 62 or 3. We've heard this tape. This was, and then we look in we were writing back and forth, and it says this was a #1 song in 1961 by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. So I remember saying to Chad Allen, let's redo this song, because we already know it's a hit. Nobody here has heard it. So we talked to our DJ, who was Bob Burns, who had adopted us as his band and then became our manager. He had just gotten a job at a television station here called CJAY, which is just down Portage Avenue, to go in late one night, Saturday night, because the owners were now in Florida on holidays. This is like a cold winter night in Winnipeg. 2 microphones. He bribes the janitor who's cleaning up the studio to let us in. We already have played a gig. We go there about 1 o'clock in the morning and start to cut tracks, and that's how we cut Shakin' All Over. And we sent it into the record label. Now, previously, we had local records here that when they start to get play outside of Winnipeg, would get a letter saying, you can't be called the Reflections, because we were Chad Allen and the Reflections, just to be like Cliff Richard and the Shadows. Like a reflection was close to a shadow. Get the letter from the lawyer saying you can't use this name Reflections because a band called the Reflections has a hit called Just Like Romeo and Juliet. They're out of Baltimore, Maryland, and you can't use their name. You can use it locally, but the minute you're going to try to get on radio, they're going to shut you down like radio all over the place. And so we had to change our name. We thought of Expressions because it has the same syllable falling as Reflections. There was a band in Detroit called the Expressions.
Of course there would be.
So we didn't have a name. So we sent this in to George Struth at Quality Records in Toronto, and he sent us a telegram back saying, I think this is a hit. What are you called? What is your name? We said, we don't know. We had gone through books, go to the Winnipeg Library, you're looking through birds and insects, ornithology and all these things. You're trying to get a name, the monarchs, the bluebirds, the robins, every name was taken. And he said, I want to put this out right now. There's a British invasion beginning. I want to start this rumor, because it was a British #1 song, that this was like Brian Jones and early Beatles, and so, at a party, and Joe Meek recorded it. Remember Telstar and Joe Meek, the legend? Yes. And so there's all this echo on it. It's such a great garage band, grungy rock recording. I'm just going to put Guess Who on it. But think of a name, and we'll have a little contest. So even if people send in a name, you could pick a name, and that could be your name. He released a white label. It said Shakin' All Over in big black block letters, and underneath it said Guess Who and a question mark. And it was #1 in Canada in like 2 weeks. And I remember going to Toronto and phoning DJs that we knew, because DJs here, this was the farm club. If you were really good, you went to Toronto or Vancouver. Right. Phoning them up saying, it's us. Guess who is really us? It's me, it's Randy, it's Chad Allen. That's us on the record. No, it ain't. It's Brian Jones. So this legend helped propel this to a #1 record in Canada. Then Scepter Records picked it up in the States. It went top 20 in Billboard. Now, we were still in school. I couldn't even afford Billboard magazine. I'd get on the bus with a little green 6-cent bus ticket, and ride to Eaton's, go into where I bought my first Chet Atkins record a few years earlier and say, Ivy, can I see the Billboard? And I look it up and I go, oh, our song's 22 this week. Isn't that nice? Close it, go home, go back to school. And we got into the top 20. The phone started to ring. Come to New York. My name is Paul Cantor. I managed Dionne Warwick, the Kingsmen, Chuck Jackson, Maxine Brown. This part of Scepter Records. They got the Shirelles. They got Britt Bacharach signed to them as a songwriter and stuff like that. Ashford and Simpson are signed as songwriters. Come to New York. We want to sign you guys. We went to New York and did the Louie Louie tour of 65 in a couple of buses with Dionne and the Belmonts, and like, this is what I wanted.
And you're what age at this point? 16, maybe?
Oh, no, it's 18 or 19, something like that.
Still.
And absolutely amazing. And these were the movies I had seen here. Rock Around the Clock and Don't Knock the Rock, where Bill Haley and the Comets get into a bus, drive to a beach town, somehow set up, do a dance, great chicks come, guys in cars come, and it's happy days, it's nothing. And so we did that all summer long. And I remember at the end of the summer, come back, and it's kind of a come down. We'd all quit school, so we've got to go back and maybe repeat the previous year. And we came back, Chad Allen said he wanted to go back to school. He was quitting the band. My dad comes to me and says, well, son, I hope you had a great summer. What have you got to show for the summer? I said, well, I got a new guitar and I have $40 left over. Isn't that great, Dad? And he just looked at me, and I'm saying, isn't that great? And he's going,
You got a guitar and $40
yes.
at the end of all of this.
Yes.
Excellent.
And was thrilled.
Well done.
And I figured, this is it. This is what I want to do. I'm not in the hole. And Chad Allen said, I've got to go back to school. He wanted to get his degree. He went to University of Manitoba. We then, because we left town, looked for the next band that had taken our throne, because we were the best cover band in Winnipeg.
Right.
Played all the dances, made really great money. And the next band was the Deverons. Their lead singer was Burton Cummings. So we called him down to CJY, this television station, where our manager had an office. He was the main DJ there. He did like a dance party like Dick Clark.
Yeah.
Called Burton down and said, you know, Chad Allen's leaving, because the rumors were all over town. He's going back to school, and I'd like to invite you to be our new lead singer. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, pretty good offer, but you're too late. The Beatles called me last night. And he walked out of the room. And we went, what? What? I went out of the room and I said, hey, did the Beatles really call you last night? He said, no, I'm just joking. I'm stunned. No, I'd love to do that. I've got to play 2 more gigs with the band, and I'll join you guys. I mean, he was that smart aleck of a kid.
I was going to say, he just, yeah.
No, that was his like first reaction, right? So he joined the band in '66, and he had a trial by fire. We decided the next summer to move to Regina and work, base in Regina and work Saskatchewan, because we'd played out Winnipeg.
Yeah. And Regina you were just looking for new ground to.
Yes, yeah, and to get him in the band. I mean, we had been together at that point 4 or 5 years. We knew all these songs. He knew the songs, but in different keys, and there was a different dynamics of him as a vocalist. Yeah. And so it was just for the summer months. Yeah. But those summer months were life-changing, because when you went out to play a gig, it was $1 to get in, and if 28 people came, you got $28. Your agent took 10%, $2.80, and you had the rest left. So we all like shared rooms, stayed in there, and that was the summer we met Joni Mitchell. I met the woman who's become my wife, and we met Terry David Mulligan, who became a lifelong friend of ours and still is.
Right.
And
this is what summer was this?
66.
66.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we went down to Minneapolis and cut a song called His Girl, and it got on the charts in England.
Yeah.
And then
you went.
The same thing that from New York, come to New York, your record's on the charts, come to London. Packed everything up. That's it, we're going to be the Beatles. Went to London. And we got to London. If you saw a pirate radio,
yes,
it was just like that. That left out a lot of the details, the real gory details, because we were a band that had come in. Philip Solomon was the guy who owned the record label King Records that our song was on. He also had ties with the pirate radio station. They bluntly came out and said to everybody, or they said it to us and some other people, this wasn't in the newspaper, but we own this radio station. We control what gets played. We treat all music like a commercial. So if you want a commercial played that's 30 seconds long for toothpaste or a soft drink, it's 30 seconds long and it's $1 a second. So that'll be, a pound a second, so that'll be 30 pounds. If you want a record played, do the math. If it's 2.5 minutes long, take that times, it's 230 pounds.
And in those days, the pound was $2.50.
It was like $3 Canadian.
Yeah,
but if you want it played every 2 hours, buy the commercial time. So through some cajoling somewhere, because we didn't have any money, somebody said, we'll give you this money, but if you're on Philip Solomon's label, he's making money through the back door anyways. So anyways, we had this top 20. We walked into his office there in London. We sat down, we were very excited. We had no contracts, which was stupid. We're so naive being from Winnipeg. It was also very good in the end, because we sat in his office and he said, I'm going to make you guys the next Beatles. So the Beatles now are like all over the world. I'm going to send you to Australia on tour. I'm going to release this song, His Girl, down there. I want you to go in the studio and cut some more songs. And I'll pay you $400, 400 pounds a week. And so I'm kind of the leader and spokesman of the band, and I say, is that 400 pounds each or for the band? Because you've got to ask these things. And he says, it's each. You guys are going to be rich. I said, so like, how much will we get a night when we play? Well, that'll vary between how big your record is. So when a tour's all over, how do we divide the money? Like, what's your percentage as an agent and a manager and as controlling this whole thing and putting the whole thing and promoting the tour and everything? You get 400 a week. Well, when we sell these millions of records and the royalties come in, how the royalties split up? What about 400 pounds a week? Don't you understand? And I realized, this is slavery. This is signing on for 400 a week, doing and going wherever they want. It's burnout. Yeah. And I said, well, is there no sharing of the royalties? And he said, 3-year contract, 400 a week. And take it or leave it. And when he said that, I looked at the other guys in the band. We had gone through this whole struggle. Burton was now in the band. We had integrated him the summer before. We'd gone through this. I'd been with the band at that point 3, 4, 5 years, you know, with different members, but
Right.
the same guys, Gary Peterson on drums and Jim Cale on bass. We got up and walked out of his office without even saying a word. We
You
knew
didn't
that.
even have, you didn't even talk to
We
each other.
didn't even talk. We got out and said, once we got out, we didn't want to have an argument in front of him. Just got up and walked out. Now, when we walked out, there was another guy sitting there who had a record on the radio who was being offered the same deal. And his last name was Dorsey. And we waited outside. I think it was Jerry Dorsey. We walked outside and we're standing there thinking, well, here we are in London. We got no gigs, no recording contract. How much money have you got? Burton, how much money you got? Jim, how much money you got? Here's what I've got. Because we had saved our Canadian money.
Yeah.
Let's all check out of our rooms. We're staying at the Regent Palace Hotel. Let's check into one room that had 2 little beds. And let's just move the dresser over so we can put our feet on the dresser. And we'll sleep this way on the beds. 2 guys on this way and 2 guys that way on the bed. Like not long ways, but so from our rear end up was on the soft part of the bed. And your legs were on the dresser or the chair.
That glamour of the music industry.
And since you like going out and partying all night, I'll sleep like from midnight to 6. You come staggering in at 6, then I'll go out for the day. So we actually traded place in the bed. Some guys were the night owls, slept during the day. But as we were standing outside of the office, this other guy came out, and he said, "You didn't take the deal." And we said, "No." "Did you?" He said, "Yeah, I took it."
This is Jerry
and
the
he's changing my name to Engelbert Humperdinck.
Engelbert Humperdinck.
Yes. Yeah.
Holy Lord. Well, you guys came back after that. You came back to Canada after
We
that
stayed
whole thing.
2 weeks. We looked at how much money we had. Terry David Mulligan was with us. We had enough money to stay about 11 more days, so we went and prepaid our hotel. And the great thing about British hotels is breakfast in the morning.
That's right.
We went and made friends with all the maids because they would bring, you would hung a little thing outside on your doorknob. This is the Regent Palace Hotel, so it's huge. It's right on Piccadilly Square, Circus there. You hung a little thing on your doorknob saying bacon and eggs, or a full English breakfast, which was like sausage and a fish and a cooked tomato and eggs and beans and everything. It was really big. And they had all Spanish maids and maids from the continent, right, who were like school kids there for a summer job and stuff. So we made friends with the maids. Canadian, whatever, you know. Canadian was big there, by the way. They hated Yanks. They hated Americans. So we always wore the Canadian.
I was over there at that time, and I know they loved us.
So we would go, the maids would then bring to our room every day about 11:30 when they were collecting the trays from breakfast, stacks of this dry, hard toast that was kind of like cardboard and cold bacon. So we ate bacon sandwiches for 2 weeks because it came free with the room. We just paid for them. We ate no other food. So I would like make bacon sandwiches, wrap them up in a napkin, put them in my pocket, and go out and walk and see London and eat bacon sandwiches all day long. To this day, I love bacon sandwiches. But English bacon is really good. It's much better than our bacon.
Yeah,
it's all free-range pigs, and it's all
whatever
It
rational.
was great at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm staying away from that. But anyways, then we came back to Winnipeg. Flat out, dead broke. We owed the Stag Shop, which is where we got our suits, because you had to have suits like the Beatles. We owed Air Canada money because we had flown there and back, and we owed we were about $25,000 in the hole, which was big money in '67.
Yeah.
And we had given up all of our gigs for months and months to go to England, so we didn't want to come back with our tail between our legs. But while we were there in London, we went to the Marquee Club and saw The Who. And they had Happy Jack and My Generation, and we saw them in a club that was probably a fourth the size of this. Marquee Club is very, very small. They were shooting a video for German television. They blew our brains out. They had the loudest amps of all, and they smashed their gear. We came back here, we got a gig. People thought we were The Who. We thought, why not? We learned Happy Jack, My Generation. We had Shaken All Over. And we went out and smashed our gear and got gigs. And then it was like, and we brought back with us the Cream single, the Hendrix single. This is before they cut their albums. So we had this mystique that we had, the money that we had saved, we came back and went to Doc Steen and PJ, the DJ here, or our buddies at CKRC and CKY, wanted to be saying, here's the music we brought back from England. And then somebody sent us the Hendrix Are You Experienced album and took that into radio. And they said, this is unbelievable, weird, psychedelic blues rock. It'll never get played on the radio here because it was still, I mean, the Beatles were mild compared to Hendrix.
Yes.
And we started to play all this British stuff, and we got gigs and gigs, and we smashed our gear. We rigged gear that would get smashed every night and repair it the next night.
I was going to say, how could you afford to smash your gear? That's what you were
Well,
doing.
you just make a big speaker box, you put in a speaker, and you cover it with new grill cloth. And all our amps were made here in Winnipeg was Garnet amps. So we went to Gar Gillis from Garnet and said, give us a bunch of this grill cloth. So at the end, I go smash a guitar and rip the grill cloth, take it off, cut a new thing, staple gun it on, and look like a new amp, you know? And
it's like a magic act.
right, so we got by with that. And then I had a call from a guy named Larry Brown, who was producing a television show in Winnipeg, CBC, and it was called Let's Go or Music Hop. And he said, we need a house band. Can you guys read music? And being the leader of the band, I said, of course we can. Gary Peterson could, because he was a drummer since the age of 4, so he can read drum charts. I could read music on a violin, but I couldn't transpose it to guitar. And Burton Cummings could read music, but classical on piano. Like, nobody wrote out pop music. You didn't even buy a book at that time of pop music. So I said, yeah, we can read music. And he said, okay, we have a guy that's doing the charts. His name is Bob McMullen. And I knew this guy, Bob McMullen. He's a great guy. He was became our George Martin. So I had his phone number. So I called him up and I said, we're going in for an audition on Monday. Have you got the charts written for the songs? And he didn't know that I had this deal with Larry Brown, that we were going to arrive and play the charts cold. So he said, yeah, I've got 4 of the songs done. I've got the Do Run Run. I've got Just My Style, Gary Lewis and the Playboys. I've got these, because he would actually go buy the singles and write out the charts. I went and got the same singles. So we called emergency practice on the Saturday and the Sunday. We ran on Monday, said, have you got the music? And they put it in front of us, and it's like, just my style. It comes out, and we look at the same keys of the record, and we start to play it. And Larry Brown comes and he goes, you guys are amazing. Not only do you play the charts, you sound like the records. Because we used to be a great cover band. And a great cover band, you've got to sound like the records. You just can't play the song. You can't even take the voice, play the solo, get the guitar sounds and everything. He said, can you start like right now? We said, sure. That paid us, I think, $1,200 a week. It was incredible. We did that show for 2 years.
Wow.
It saved our bacon. We paid off Air Canada and the Stag Shop, our clothing place, and Garnet Amps, who'd given us all free amps and everything. Didn't charge them, so we paid everybody back. And doing that show every single week and going in every single week, I would liken that to the Beatles when they decided to stay off the road and they went into Abbey Road every single day, and you'd show up at 10 o'clock and you'd work till 6 or 7 at night. You'd go home and think about what you're going to do the next day. And we were still copying records. We were copying the hits.
Yeah.
But after a while, doing the hits every day for like 39 weeks a year, you get very redundant in repeating the song. So Larry Brown, the producer, came and said, I know you guys can write your own songs. I'm going to give you a chance to write your own songs that are good enough to fit in between the Supremes and the Beatles. And we're going to put one of your songs in there. So you and Burton come up with a good enough song. And we went and busted our tails and listened. How does Holland Dozier and Holland write those songs? How do Lennon and McCartney write those songs? How does Bacharach and David write those songs? How does Brian Wilson write those songs? And got the essence of the writing, which is simplicity. It's really 2 or 3 simple things that you put together that people can remember the minute they hear it. It's not big complex stuff like we were used to, like classical music. It's small little...
And
it's
verse, bridge.
Right, yeah,
verse,
very repetitive, right? Yeah. And out of that, we started to do our own original material on television. And we would then watch it, because we would pre-record it one day and go home and watch it the next day. And then we got a call from Toronto. Would we do a Coca-Cola commercial? And Jack Richardson was a big producer, and he had produced Things Go Better with Coke with Ray Charles and Bobby Curtola, and other artists were singing this Coke commercial. And I thought this was for a Coke commercial. And just through telexes back and forth, or telegrams, it was, no, we want you to cut an album. We've heard your original material. We have another band from Ottawa who's got original material. They're called the Staccatos.
It's still the Staccatos then.
And they were yeah. And we want one side to be them and the other side will be you. So you and Burton write 5 or 6 songs and do them on the television show. Those will be your demos, and then just send me copies. So we did these songs, did them on the TV show, sent them to Jack Richardson. Once we got 7 or 8 songs, he picked enough for half of an album, which I think was 5 songs. Took us to Toronto to record. And he said, I don't really trust my own ears. I'm going to bring in this guy they call a mixer. Well, what's a mixer? Well, he balances the tracks. I think we did this in 4-track, maybe? I don't know. Maybe 8. I don't know. This was 68. Late 67. Well, who's this mixer? Oh, his name's Phil Ramone. Okay, so we meet this guy. He's a young guy. We're young guys. He's a few years older than us. So Phil Ramone mixed that album for us and the Staccatos. That album still sounds good today. There's something about this guy and his ears and the way he did gear. And so after that, it was such a big seller. I think that sold that was gold at its time. It was like a gold album. And you could only get the album with 10 Coca-Cola caps and $1. So but it went like 50,000.
But who's distributing this, though? Like was it on a label? So
it just had a pear. It was called the Wild Pear. They had a pear cut in half. And it was called the Wild Pear. So half of the pear was the Staccato. The other half of the pear was us. I think it was sold through Coca-Cola.
Wow.
I don't know if stores had it, but like I said, for 10 Coke caps and this little coupon, you put your name and address, and you got the album and $1.
Yeah.
So it became a gold album, but we couldn't get it certified because it wasn't sold through normal retail.
Yes.
But we did have, I think, the first Canadian gold album by Canadian artists. And out of that, Jack Richardson called and said, I'm hearing your more original stuff that you're doing on the television show. It's really good. I'm going to mortgage my house, and I want to take you to New York. And we're going to go to Phil Ramone's A&R studio. We're going to cut an album.
So when a guy says to you, I'm going to mortgage my house, does that just give you, well, at the time, I guess you're cocky enough to not to really realize what that meant, I'm assuming. Were you?
Well, when you're a kid, you don't really realize it until you have your own house and realize what a mortgage is.
Yes. What this guy did for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So he took us to New York. He also had a great arranger by the name of Ben McPeak, who did a lot of stuff with the Toronto Symphony. And we were into the Beatles era, where you did a real rock song, you did an acid rock song, you did a blues song, and you did a ballad, and you put strings in. No big deal. So out of that came These Eyes, which is a song that was spurred when I saw Joni Mitchell that night in Regina in that summer when Burton Cummings joined the band. I actually wrote the genesis of that song on piano. I'm not a piano player, but it's the key of C, so I could do marvelous things in the key of C on a piano. I grew up with a brother who played accordion, so I used to get him to pump the accordion, and I would sit there and play in the key of C, because we couldn't afford a piano in our house. It was too big and too noisy and too expensive. So that was how I wrote These Eyes, was from that thing, and then I showed it to Burton, and we expanded on the song. Ben McPeak does it. The song still sounds great today on the radio. It's one of those magical songs.
And that piano kind of intro to that song, that's what you were plunking out?
That's what I showed Burton Cummings. Boom, boom, da-da-da-da-da. And he went, that's amazing. He's grade 12 piano. This was the essence of LCD, right? Lowest common denominator thing that you could get. It's just like starting a song like Taking Care of Business. The first thing you play on a guitar is Smoke on the Waters.
That's right.
Same things backwards becomes Peter Gunn. Da-da-da-da. Same notes, in different orders and stuff like that.
I got to ask you about Taking Care of Business, too, because you've told the story, and I want you to get you to repeat it here to me, because I think it's a great story, about the genesis of that song, because I've read you talking about how you liked Paperback Writer, the Beatles song, and you were basically writing a song that was similar to that when you were still with the Guess Who.
Right.
That was where that...
Right. Well, the Beatles were writing, I believe, their own version of Johnny Be Good. Because what else can you write about? Falling in love, falling out of love. A car, a sunny day, a rainy day. You know what I mean? You run out of topics. So you tend to want to write about the day in the life of someone. So Chuck Berry writing that great Johnny Be Good song, and then all his other songs. He was the greatest poet in rock and roll. I mean, pre-Dylan, Chuck Berry was it. The stories were amazing. And he made up his own words to rhyme, like motivating. As I was motivating over the hill, I saw Maybelline at Coupe de Ville. You know what I mean? Instead of saying as I was driving my car. Motivating. He made up these words. And so the Beatles trying to copy him, doing the day in the life of a guy who wrote, little trashy novels, Paperback Writer. So that was kind of my template. So when we had gone to New York in that summer of '65, and we went there subsequently to record at Scepter Records with Stanley Greenberg and Florence Greenberg, who owned the label. She managed the Shirelles. She wrote Soldier Boy for the Shirelles. Bacharach and David would come in pitching songs. Ashford and Simpson would come in pitching songs. They were high school kids. They would skip school in the afternoon and come and play us songs. So we recorded on the next Guess Who album that was done at Scepter, an Ashford and Simpson song, things like that. So we were in this whole, and that's where we got in really good with Phil Ramone, because he was producing Dionne Warwick, our engineering with Burt Bacharach at the time. Florence Greenberg's son was the engineer, Stanley Greenberg. He was blind. Every day he'd come to work, he'd wear a white collar. So we figured, how do you know what you're wearing? You're Stanley, you're blind, for Pete's sake. And he'd come with a white cane and come to work. White collar, a tie, a tweed jacket with the patches on it.
Right.
Stanley, why do you dress like this? Because we're all there in schleppy clothes and it's t-shirts. You're in the studio, nobody's singing. I want to be like George Martin. And every day, he'd have to, and engineer, as a band, you're getting rolling in the studio at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. You have a little break for dinner, and about 8 or 9 o'clock, that's your time you usually go on stage. Your body's in rhythm, and you start to record. He'd have to leave every night about 10 after 10 to get the 11 o'clock train wherever he went. And I couldn't believe this guy with the white cane who was blind walked down the street, went to Grand Central Station, sometimes in a taxi, but he would usually walk because he counted the steps and the blocks. He knew where he was. And I said, so when you come back in the morning, how do you do it? He said, I just reverse it. I take the 8:15 back into the city. So I'm trying to write a song, and I'm trying to do a day in the life of a guy. So I have an idea to have this song called White Collar Worker, because everybody around me is wearing white collars, button-downs to look like George Martin. And Stanley Greenberg is specifically wearing a white collar. And so the next morning I get up and I go, and I actually meet the 8:15 that comes into the city to Grand Central. And all these girls are getting off the train, and they're doing their makeup, and they're trying to look pretty, and then they're going to work. Then started at 9 in the morning, so they took the 8:15 to the city. Now that song's a little dated because everyone starts at 10. I should have redo it as 9:15 into the city. So I write this song, and it's called White Collar Worker, and it's the same lyrics. They get up in the morning from the alarm clock's warning, take the 8:15 into the city. There's a whistle up above him, the whistles in New York that go at noon and 9 o'clock to start the beginning of the day. And the girls are trying to look pretty. If your train's out, so you know the lyrics. But when it got to my hook, the song stopped, and we were all supposed to go, white collar worker, just like paperback writer.
Okay.
So I show that song to the Guess Who, to Burton Cummings, and he goes, great lyrics, real Chuck Berry lyrics, just great. We're going to get sued by Lennon McCartney. We can't do that breakdown where we all do White Collar Worker. Why not? You know what I mean? Because when you write a song, you have what's called demo love. You write the song, it's the greatest thing in the world. You put this together yourself.
Demo love.
Demo love.
Demo love, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The song gets passed on. The next album, it gets passed on. Every subsequent Guess Who album, the song gets passed on.
You still got it back here.
I still got it. I know that these are my lyrics. This is my Chuck Berry song.
Right.
I just need to co-write it with myself. I don't want to share this with anybody. This is my cabin made of earth and wood. There's a country boy named Johnny. We get the same kind of rhythm. I'm copying the Chuck Berry rhythm of the lyrics and everything. So I pitch Brave Belt, which is kind of a country band. I come back and hook up with Chad Allen again, and he leaves again and leaves me high and dry. So I have to get Fred Turner in the band, which is amazing because he's got a great voice. I've known Fred since I was 14. He had the same bug as I did, seeing Elvis on TV and that whole thing. So he's kind of like my age and my attitude and my dream. He's sharing my dream. So we get Fred into Brave Belt, and we become Bachman-Turner Overdrive because a couple of Bachmans and a Turner. I still pitch the song, and everybody says, great song, got to change the middle. So we're playing in Vancouver, across the bridge, so it was in North or West Vancouver. We're doing 5 nights a week, Monday through Saturday night, 5 50-minute sets a night.
5 50 minutes.
5 50s a night, yes.
5 50s.
5 50s a night.
Jeez. Okay. All right.
1 at 8, 1 at 9, 1 at 10, 1 at 11, 1 at 12, you know.
Man. And there's a Sea Fox jock,
with a 10-minute break.
Yeah.
You know, every hour. And it was so bad, we didn't even have enough material that our first set at 8 o'clock also became our midnight set because people would come in and get hammered and leave or pick up a chick and leave, do the same song. We'd say, by request from our first set. Basically, we had like 3 sets. One of those nights, Fred Turner lost his voice. So when you're screaming 5 50s a night, it gets a Saturday night, it's, I can't talk, you gotta sing. So I had to sing the last set on a Saturday night. As you know, the last set on a Saturday night, this is your last chance to get your last round of drinks in, to dance and pick up a chick, whatever, or what's going to happen later, hanging out with the guys, whatever you're going to do. And I don't know that many songs, because I'm only a harmony singer up to that point, basically a guitar player, with a great voice of Burton Cummings and the great voice of C.F. Turner. I've got to sing the last set. So I pull out a Dylan song, She Belongs to Me, and I do it the way Rick Nelson did it. But as I start this song, she's got everything she needs. And I'm trying to do, she's not it, she don't look back. I'm trying to give the song some authenticity, and nobody's dancing. And this is like a high school dance. If they don't dance, it's death for the band. You've got to get them up dancing. And once they're up dancing, you never stop the music. You've got to keep them up. And once they sit down again, you have that whole battle again to get this guy to go and ask this girl in the middle of the big gymnasium floor to walk across and ask for a dance and maybe get refused. And then he's He's standing there alone. The girl said, no, I don't want to dance. And he's a dork in front of all his friends. You got to keep them dancing. So She Belongs to Me doesn't work, so I cut it short. And there was a song on the radio at the time, Oyo Como Va by Santana. Yeah. And none of us know Spanish, but you figure I'll sing it in Ukrainian or something. So for fun, we start Oyo Como Va, which you can drag out to be 8 and 10 minutes long. But it being on the radio, it being a popular song, I didn't really need to sing it. There was like no singing. There was this chant. So I start, dun, 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 and we're a 3-piece band at the time. And everybody gets up and dances because they recognize it. When I go into da-da-da-da-da-da, which is the horn line from the thing that Santana played, everybody's up dancing. And I start to sing Oyo Como Va, pierogies. Hueyo Kwamaza, Brilliant. I don't know what I'm saying. Nobody cares. They're drunk. Nobody in Vancouver knows Spanish anyways. I get through this song. But while I'm thinking of the song, more and more people are dancing because I'm getting to the middle, the solo. I'm doing all the answers and everything, and everyone's singing. Now my brother's singing with me on drums. We're making up these lyrics. And part of me is thinking, you can't let them sit down. What are you going to do next? When you end this song, you've got to start another song right then. Don't let them sit down. And a light goes on, and it's like right next to you is your lyrics to White Collar Work. And on the way to the gig that night, a friend of ours was there, Dale Burlingham, who was Daryl B on the radio. And he said, this is Daryl B on C-Fun Radio, and we're taking care of business. And he played a song by the Beach Boys. And I thought, that's a great song title. I got to remember that. Taking care of business, taking care of business, taking care of business. How am I going to say this? It's just a great title for a song. So I write it down on a napkin. My songwriting kit, which is a McDonald's napkin and a smashed crayon from one of my kids. I write down taking care, because I'm driving over the bridge. And then I remember that it goes right next to this shelf of my favorite things, next to my dear things in my heart, right next to White Collar Worker. On stage that night, I figured, this is your chance to use this song, White Collar Worker. So as I'm still playing Oh Come Away, I turn around and say, follow me. And now White Collar Worker, probably when I wrote it, had maybe 7 or 8 chords. I can't tell them the chords. So in my mind, I've got to do a Louie, 3 chords, rock and roll. So I say to Fred, C, B flat, and F. Follow me. I start to play a Chuck Berry beginning. Not the beginning I used to have to White Collar Work. And as I get to it, I sing my lyrics. They get up in the morning from the alarm clocks roaring and take the 8:15 to the city. And it's good. And everyone's still dancing. And I figured, what am I going to do when I get to that middle thing where we're supposed to stop? I'm just going to slide taking care of business and we won't stop. So instead of stopping doing that White Collar Worker, we went right into taking care of business, space, 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 taking care of business. And everybody starts to sing it. And I go, oh my God, this is the moment. This is like when I wrote American Woman on the stage in Kitchener-Waterloo. You start to play it and everybody knows that immediately. It's like that kind of a resonance with the crowd. And when it got to the hook again, after my second verse, everybody sang Taking Care of Business, as did Fred and Robbie, who were in the band. And I answered them. Every day, taking care of business. Every way, taking care of business. It's all mine, taking care of business and working overtime. And I went, oh, my, what incredible lyrics that came out of nowhere. After the gig, I wrote it all down. And we were going to record 2 weeks later. And I probably took in the lyrics and said, Fred, here's the lyrics. And he said, what are you giving me the lyrics for? I want you to sing that song. Give me a real break on stage. Stop singing bad Bob Dylan and stop singing Oyo Como Va, half in Ukrainian, half in Spanish, and sing one of our own songs. So we'll just put it on as an album cut. So that went on BTO2 as an album cut.
And as an album cut, you weren't paying a lot of attention to it.
No, it sped up and slowed down. And when we played it live that night, that ended the set. Actually, when we finished recording the song, which was at about midnight, there's a knock at the studio door. There's a guy standing there. He's holding some pizzas. He's wearing an army jacket and army hat. He said, "Do you guys order pizza?" And we said, "No, down the hall." So this is at K-Smith Studios in Seattle. Down the hall with Steve Miller doing his Fly Like an Eagle album and War doing their Why Can't We Be Friends album. There's 3 studios there. So he goes down and gets rid of the pizza. And he comes back and he says, knocks on the door again. I've been listening to this song through the door. It sounds like it could really use a piano. And I said, yeah, great. I'd love Little Richard, but he's, in Riverside, California, and Elton John's at Caribou going crazy. And he says, I'm a piano player. Give me a shot to play on this track. I go, what? We're going home. Look, give me a shot, okay? So we opened the piano, throw in a mic. Normally you get the piano tuned, put in stereo mics like a la Elton John and get it. I just threw in a mic, closed the lid, covered it up with a cloth and said, okay, play your track. He wrote down where the song stopped and started, 3 chords, real easy. He said, what do you want? I said, well, normally you give a guy 3 or 4 takes. Okay, first time give me Little Richard, which is all da-da-da-da-da. And then next time give me some Dr. John, like octaves.
Yeah, right.
Next time give me something, slightly different, Fats Domino or something. So he figures he's going to try a little bit of everything in the first take. And then I pick what I like, and then he'll do another take. He plays all these different styles all at once in the song, because the piano is very inconsistent in that song. But he plays in all the little gaps. If the train's on time, you get slap your saving job to get your pay. If you ever get annoyed. And he filled in between my vocals, like he was jamming with the track. So he finished that, did 1 take, finished it and left. I closed the lid, said, let's go home. By now it's like 1:30 in the morning. We're starting again at 11 the next morning. The head of our record label flies in the next day to hear the album. He's really concerned because BTO 1 has come out. It's got a lot of airplay. It's a gold album. It's top 40, but there's no it's top 40 on the album chart, but there's no top 40, what he calls singles, to get top 40 radio. So he's saying to me, look, you wrote the hits in the Guess Who. I want a couple of hits on here that we know you're going to sell albums because you're a touring band, you're going to sell 1 million albums, but I want you to get you on top 40 radio. So that's how I wrote Let It Ride. And he was coming in to hear what we've got. He said, Charlie, I think we've got a great song called Let It Ride. So we play him Let It Ride. He goes, that's great. You got to edit it out because it was another long song. Edit it out for radio, do this and that, and that'll fit on radio. It gets to Takin Care of Business, which is in the same tape that he's listening to. And I say to the engineer, don't play the piano track, because I hadn't even heard it back. The guy just did it and we left. Don't play the piano track. Just play in the song. So we play in the song and it starts, and Charlie's kind of going like this, yeah. Halfway through the song, the engineer pushes up the fader that's got the piano on it, and the piano comes in halfway through the song, and Charlie goes, oh my God, what's that? You got a piano on this? And we go, yeah. He said, piano will get you into top 40. Nobody's got piano. Everything's guitar, bass, and drums except one guy, Elton John. He's all over the radio. It's just something different for the ears, because everything was guitar, bass, and drums, like Frampton, Doobies, ZZ Top, REO Speedwagon, Aerosmith. Everything was guitars. Let me hear the whole track. So we back it up, play him the whole track, and he says, that's incredible. Edit out the middle part. That's great. Who's playing the piano? And I said, I have no idea. A guy knocked on the door last night. He brought some pizza here, and I don't know who this guy is. He said, you got to find the guy. I said, let's just release it. No, you got to find the guy. He's got to be in the union. We've got to give him credit, or they could sue you later, and the union will go crazy. So we began this search to find this guy. We actually found him. His name was Norman Durkee. And he was a musician who didn't really deliver pizza. He worked at the studio, but I didn't know that. And when somebody brought the pizza door, he took it and was knocking on our doors to see who got the pizza. He didn't want the delivery guy disturbing us. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Right. So that's the guy who played on Takin Care of Business.
And that's the only time he's ever played with you?
Yeah. And that's the take you hear.
And whatever happened to him, do you know?
Yes, he went on to become Bette Midler's music director on her first North American tour. And then when I played with Ringo Starr All-Star Band in '95, and we were playing the Greek Theater in L.A., outdoors, Norman Durkee was there. He's the rehearsal pianist for the L.A. Symphony or the L.A. Philharmonic or something like that.
Does he get a cut of any of that?
No, he got paid $120. But his piano playing made the track. But when I was first asked, I said, I don't know. It was a pizza delivery guy who brought, I didn't even know who he was or what he was doing there.
We've got 1 minute left. There's one last thing I want to ask you. And this is, and I mean, you have such great stories. I know that a few years ago, because I had a friend who works at the National Library and Archives, that you donated massive amounts of your stuff to the National Archives. Does that suggest that over all these years you just hung on to as much stuff as you possibly could? Is that what you did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought the phone would never ring for next week's gig. When I first played a gig, and I was kind of like, I was the oldest brother from 4 boys. In the band, I was kind of Burton Cummings' older brother in a way, because he was an only child and didn't have a dad. I kind of oversaw everything, or looked after, or kind of became the manager or the group leader just because I paid the bills. I got the money. I counted the money after the gig. I deposited it in the bank account. I paid our ESSO bill for all that stuff. So I was just kind of the main overseer kind of guy. And in starting this, I forgot what you asked me.
Well, you're just hanging on to stuff.
Oh, yes.
If you're that kind of guy, you're going to...
So I would save the little handbill Or if we got a review in the West Kelowna Post, the little North End newspaper in West Kelowna, I would save that. I also had an aunt who would take me to, who was like 10 years younger than my mother, and she was into rock and roll and drove around a convertible with her boyfriend. She would take me to these rock and roll shows all over Winnipeg, country western rock and roll shows, because I was too young to get in or to go by myself. So I was 15, 16, 17. My mom would let me go because it was with her younger sister. So she kept the scrapbook for me. So later on, she gave me the scrapbook that was like all my early pictures with different guitars and different kids and all the reviews and everything. And I just kept adding to that. So I ended up living in White Rock. And, you know, they have these storage facilities now. I had 3 or 4 of these side by side with about a 15-foot ceiling, just with shelves all stacked up with every contract, every T-shirt, every review, every memento, every knick-knack and garbage. And I read, I had several letters from Ottawa. Would I like to donate my garbage, as they say in Quebec, to the National Archives? And I said, no, I want to keep this stuff. This is my stuff. You know, you've seen the George Carlin thing of stuff. Then, amazingly enough, I'm flying from Vancouver to Toronto, and in front of me in the pocket on the plane is a Winnipeg newspaper. So when you leave town, there's something about, as you grew up as a kid, reading the colored comics, the funnies, right. And there's something about the print that's very familiar. So I'm reading the Winnipeg Free Press, or the Tribune, one of the papers, and it's familiar. So I'm reading the whole paper back to back. It's different than the font used by the Vancouver or Toronto. And I don't know how there's a Winnipeg paper in front of me, because the flight's from Toronto to Vancouver to Toronto. So I read this whole thing, and when I get to the entertainment page, it says, a couple of Métis, First Nation artists, have donated their drawings to the National Archives and got a tax credit. So I go, wow. So I had a lawyer at the time, Graham Henderson. I said, so I called him. I said, Graham, I keep getting these offers from Ottawa to donate my stuff. My wife wants to get rid of this. I'm just paying storage on this stuff. See if I could donate it to Ottawa, and if I can get a tax credit, and if I can have access to it, because it's better to be stored there, all alphabetically. So if I need something, they can get me a copy of
it. From the
old contract, or the mixes, or all the master. I had all the master tapes and everything. So he called me back. He said, "Yeah, they'll give you a tax credit. A guy's going to fly out, and he wants to go through this stuff with you." And I said, "Are you kidding? This is like the early '90s." And he said, "For the museum, you have to document every shred of paper. You have to write down, this is a piece of paper, this is a contract from West Kelowna Community Center, July the 3rd, 1963 or whatever.
This is the downside.
And all that stuff." At the time, I had the first laptop. So I had a drummer, and we canceled all our gigs. And this guy from Ottawa came in, he looked at my stuff, he said, "This is worth millions. I'll give you a tax credit in the millions. This is Canadian history." Because in Winnipeg, I used to produce a lot of other bands. The Mongrels, the Sugar and Spice. I was kind of the guy that had worked with Phil Ramone and Jack Richardson. So, do you know what I mean? Osmosically, there's a new word. Through osmosis, I kind of had the knowledge. And I had hung out with Lenny Breau. So I had this osmosis kind of thing to the greater, higher guys. And then later on, I produced Trooper, a great Vancouver band. So I had all this was in my archive. So for them to get this, and this touched on all the Winnipeg bands, the Sugar and Spice, the Gettysburg Address, Franklin Records, Lenny Breau, Ray St. Germain, all the television shows with Guess Who, and with Let's Go and Music Hop. I had all this stuff. So it was really worth millions of dollars. But once he looked at it and took a guesstimate of what it was worth, I then had to sit with my drummer, and I had to go and he would type it all down. So we had this voluminous amount of stuff, and then we sent it to Ottawa on trucks. And I was the first person to do this in pop music. Yeah. And what made me do it was they showed me the Glenn Gould archives when he passed away, what they did for him. And I thought, this is really good, this is really respectful, it's really orderly, and my stuff needs to be treated this way. It's precious.
So you're back on the road with Fred.
I am. I'm not quite on the road yet.
Well, yeah, but how does, as we sit here, we're not. But by the time people see this, you will be. And
it's great.
Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking forward to this. Why are you doing it? I'm curious. What motivates you to do this?
I feel there's a footstep right there that I can step right into. And as it happened, after the Guess Who being my first footstep, and where am I going to step next? And the evolution that happened in there of Chad Allen leaving, Burton Cummings coming in and me leaving and me starting another band, Brave Belt, where Chad Allen again left and Fred Turner came in, and I used the Guess Who footstep as a template of everything not to do, not to get screwed by your record label or your publisher or your da or the da-da-da, and use it all. My next footstep with BTO was much more productive. First of all, nobody would work with me. I had to do everything myself. So I produced the band. I took all my Phil Ramone, Jack Richardson tricks and blah, blah, and I produced BTO, and it created something out of thin air because we started with nothing. Tried not to make the same mistakes that were made with the Guess Who, which a lot were business mistakes and financial mistakes. Right. And the same thing happened. To get together with the Guess Who in 1999 for a reunion for 4 songs that then expands into being, why don't you tour Canada? And that goes on for 5 years. And then I evolved with Cummings and become Bachman and Cummings up to last year, 2009. I start a solo album because everyone was saying, get back to rock, get back to rock. So I start a solo album that's really bluesy rock. And I get Neil Young for a track. I get Jeff Healey for a track. I call Paul Rogers, the great singer who's now with Queen and Bad Company. And he says, yeah, he'll do a track. And I think, why don't I send a track to Turner? Fred had been emailing me for 3 years saying, do you want to get back together? This guy wants us to play Sweden rock. And I'm saying, I'm busy with Cummings. I'm busy with Cummings. Finally, I'm done with Cummings. We're going to take some time and do other projects. I call Fred and say, you know, I could maybe do Sweden rock. I'm working on a solo album. Do you want to sing a song with me? That we have something new if we go to Sweden rock. I send him a song called Rock and Roll's the Only Way Out. He sings on it, sends it back to me. I go, oh, my, this is incredible. Fred, do you have any more songs? He said, I love this, because he's been retired since 2004. I love this. I'm back. You got any more songs? I sent him some more of my songs. I decide to flip my solo album, which is what Brave Belt was, basically. Right. Me doing, like, completely different music, country rock. I decide to flip it and make it a Bachman-Turner album. I tell Neil Young I'm not going to use this track. I tell Paul Rogers later, and they all say, fine, they understand the evolution. And they're saying, go with it, man. Go with Turner. Go with Turner. That was the rock that rolled, you know, that kind of thing. So I come to Winnipeg last December, and Fred sings on a bunch of songs. I mix it, and now I'm back with him. We're rehearsing. We're on the road. The record's out. The response to people is great. So it was like the next footstep after my solo thing, and I morphed that into Fred. And it's such a natural evolution for him to come aboard. Him walking in, it's like my old friend that I knew when I was 14, and I feel so fortunate that I still know and talk to and work with Burton Cummings, Neil Young, and Fred Turner, the great rock and roll voices that came out of Winnipeg. Yeah. And they're still out there in the world, and people all know their voices and love them. And I feel so fortunate I can work with these guys.
I'm still back there where you said I had to tell Neil Young I wasn't going to use his track. That'll stick in my mind for a while. But still, anyway. Good of you to spend all the time.
I have an open invite to go down to his studio when his calendar is free and mine's free to record another song.
Well, you'll be doing that, I'm thinking.
As soon as possible.
All right. Thanks a lot, Randy. It's been
My
great.
pleasure.
Okay, take it easy.
On the next Beyond Politics,
I think